Hey everyone, how you doing? I'm Steve and this is Renovation Project. I know it's been a while. I was hoping to get a podcast off to you during the holidays, but they just had a mind of their own. But I hope you're doing well. We are looking forward to this new year. And speaking of the new year, I'm not really interested in talking with you about New Year's resolutions. There might be a few things that you might want to consider modifying in your life or your diet and all that kind of stuff, and that's a good thing. But how about if we find out what God's plan is? Jeremiah 29:11 tells us that He has a plan for us, and He actually knows what that plan is. So don't you think it would be a great idea if we tried to get a copy of that plan? I mean, everything that I've ever done in the way of a project has got a plan. Now, some of them aren't drawn in to the extent that others are. My big estate homes had hundreds and hundreds of pages of plans. But if one thing is for sure, every project of any kind has to have a plan so that you can determine what you have and where you want to go. Most of the clients that I've ever built for the most part, have a difficult time kind of picturing the whole finished project type of an idea. Some have a better idea than others, but there are a couple of sections of most plans that create a better picture for most clients, and that would be the floor plan and the elevation pages. And the floor plan would be, of course, that vertical bird's eye perspective that you're looking down on a project and you can see all the different rooms and their layout. And the elevation pages would be the horizontal perspective as you looking forward towards a wall or a section of the house. And this, for most clients, really, again, provides a much better picture because, for the most part, looking at some of these plans is like gazing at a foreign language for a lot of people. Now, our awesome God, our great God, let's call him, the architect. He designed for you and for me. And again, we look back to Jeremiah's passage. God knows the plans He has for us. So He's got a design. Now, granted, let's call that Plan A. It was a really cool plan. But we all torched Plan A a long time ago. Isaiah talks about us like being sheep, and each of us has turned. We've all gone to our own way. So Plan A just went out the window right there. But God is not outdone. He's an architect. He knows how to design. He knows how to create. He can take the old and morph it into the new. He's never been one to throw out a project or just throw in the towel. He's actually, again, very creative where he can come up with a plan C or a plan D and move along. Now, if you don't believe me, just take a look at Israel back in the period of the occupation that we find in the book of Judges. Recorded for us are about 350 years of Israel pretty much not doing it right. But one thing we see in that entire aspect of Israel's history is that God never rejected them. Yeah, they took it on the chin a few times, and they had to be disciplined and judged because they'd given their hearts to other gods. But God didn't discard them. He literally goes after them, and that's really the picture of the book of Judges. Now, is Plan C worse than Plan A? I guess in one regard we could say, yeah, Plan A was perfect and C maybe not so much. But really it's not because we're dealing with a God that's creative, He's redemptive, He's forgiving, and He's amazingly creative. So Plan C, or Plan D, is just different. Back in the day, we used to call these blueprints. They don't call them that anymore. I guess a lot of people still do. But when big plotters and huge printers came up, they just cranked these things out more in a printing process than in the old blueprint model. We just call them plans, and it's pretty much like second nature for most contractors, general contractors, when we're building a big estate-size home. And speaking of the larger homes, in the hundreds of pages that we had, right up the very front, you have all this boilerplate stuff and details from the city and fire department and stuff like that. And being on the West Coast here, right on the coast, we have coastal commission plans and regulations that we have to deal with. And certainly here in California, we have these crazy green measures that we have to accommodate as well. I had geotechnical surveys and property line. We had setback specifications, civil line and grades, height requirements. And that's all stuff before you even get to the actual plan. These are things that we have to take into consideration regarding the property and the location and the setting and all of this stuff. I had roofing plans. I had wine cellar plans, elevator plans, aquarium plans. It was endless, and everything had a detail. Everything had a layout and a specification. In other words, it was information to get me where I needed to go. We had an interior decorator who kind of filled in, obviously, the appliances and the plumbing fixtures and the lighting fixtures, reflected ceiling plans, which showed locations of can lights and all of that kind of stuff, door and window schedules for different sizes and locations and all the specifications on that stuff. I mean, my plans were so big, I had to reduce them down to what we call mini or micro sets. The plans I had were twice this size and way too big, to lug around on a project. So I'd lock those up in my trailer and then carry around this much more manageable set of plans. But one of the first things that I would do would be to literally scour these plans and make notes and make lists and just familiarize myself with the plan. So I, as a general contractor, could know how I was going to get there. Yeah, there's a design, but there's protocols, there's sequence. You have to do things in a certain manner and a certain timing for other trades to come behind, and those trades can't come before. So the architect and her team spent an extraordinary amount of time designing and creating and CAD drawing all of this stuff. And again, all the engineers and the other professionals and decorators took a lot of time devising this set of plans. And with all of that time invested, one would think I have everything I need to build this project. And on one level, yeah, you do. But you'd be surprised to find out that with all of the thoughtfulness and all the time and money and effort spent, there is a lot to be worked out in real time. And towards the end of, I should say, at the end of the architectural pages, mine were white, and then the blue pages began what were called the engineering pages. But the very back section of architecturals are known as details. And there could be up to 30 different details on any given page, and up to, who knows, 13, 14 different detail pages in all. And what was interesting is while looking on the elevation or floor plan, the pages, clues were actually given that there was more information. And these clues were typically identified by a circle that had a horizontal line splitting the circle. Like this one here on the second floor, it's bathroom number 3. Now, the bottom of the circle tells me I will find some more information regarding this section, and it's found on D5, page D5. The upper number tells me which detail on that page I will find the information I'm looking for. So after looking at the plan and then seeing a detail notation, I just hold my place on the plan and I flip to the appropriate page and detail. Well, what's it provide? Well, most of the time, it's an expansion of a condition or situation. It's really intended to provide further information that's necessary for me to complete that section with a very specific detail in mind, a more blown-up detail than I would find on the general pages themselves. Now, as a result, I have an idea now of what the architect, what the designer had in mind for that particular section. And in this case, what the bathtub detail as the tile rolls over the top and terminates on the tub itself. Now, it doesn't give me the tub specs. It doesn't tell me the tile design or the size or any of that. I have to go to the interior decorator's manual to find all that information and, again, what it's supposed to look like. But there were times where I would look on either the elevation or the floor plan, and I'd see that there was a notation that there was some detail available. Now, in this case here, in this square box, you can see the number 33. Well, when I look down at the index at the bottom of the page, it tells me that detail 33 represents a 36-inch high guardrail. But then right next to it, it says, see detail. And then I go back up to the page, and there is another circle with another horizontal line through the middle. But this time, the page I'm finding that detail is D4. And the detail that I'm supposed to look for is in box number 15. But when I flipped to the appropriate spot, there was a blank square, and there was nothing in it. I mean, detail 15 should be right here, but it's blank. So I typically would just flip back to the page, the floor plan, and I'd make sure that I was actually in the right place and had the right number. And sure enough, in this case, I was, and there was absolutely nothing there. There was no detail, even though it told me to turn here and find the detail, there was nothing there. So it was obvious to me that there was some thought from the architect or the engineer that a detail was necessary. But as of this particular printing, there was no detail represented. Didn't mean there wasn't one, but it wasn't there. It wasn't passed on, which brings me to another very important concept. The plans are not complete. Now, again, that could be a little disconcerting to some. With hundreds of pages of plans, the idea that there's something missing, it's a little troublesome, unless you understand that it's not that the architect forgot, but it's what it's requiring is for some participation on my part to reach out. And so whenever I encountered a situation like this where I'm looking at the plan, it's telling me there's a detail, there's no detail, what I automatically do is I send out an RFI. An RFI is a request for information. And then I just pop that email out to the architect or the designer or the engineer, whoever I'm requesting information from. And my friends, that's what prayer is. It's an RFI. It's a request for information. You're asking for clarity. You want instruction. You want insight. Whatever, right? You're requesting something that would give you knowledge that you might continue in a pathway. Now, the architect wouldn't always necessarily just stop everything and generate an entirely new revision. He would simply look at my request and send me back a response. Now, sometimes it would take a little drawing or something on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and he'd stamp it, sign it, boom, he'd attach it and send it to me. On other occasions, I might just get an email response to a question for clarity's sake. And I would collate these in a notebook, so I had a constant reminder of the responses to my RFIs. Sometimes I would actually cut out, if there was a little detail, I'd cut it out and I'd staple it on top of, like in this case, blank number 15, and it filled in the information I was requesting. And so when I get these things back, and it's always a good thing when you hear the email chirp and you realize that you just got an answer to prayer. Because, again, that's what the RFI is. You're asking for information, and boy, isn't it great when that answer finally arrives. But this leads me to another really important aspect of following the plans. On some of these large projects that I was working on, and one comes to mind, this 12,000 square foot residence on Balboa Peninsula in Newport Beach. The property was, we demoed a house that was on top of it, but we left the remaining existing basement, 12-inch thick concrete, and it was embedded. The water table was 8 feet deep, so this basement was literally floating in water, about halfway up. It was like a big anchor, so it was not leaking. The architect incorporated this detail so we didn't have to mess with it, incorporated it into the design. But the engineer had called out for some caissons because we were in this water table situation. He designed 24-inch caissons that were drilled 40 feet deep around the structure that we were going to tie in these grade beams and secure the foundation to. So I call out a civil engineer, and we set the boundaries. We do some property building offsets, and then that way I can triangulate exactly where these caissons are going to go. So we move the drill rig, to the far water side of the property, as we were going to drill and then move our way off as we went. So by the time he was done, he was right by the alley, and he could move his rig out. So I set up the first caissons. He's drilling away, and then I'm moving towards the caissons that are now right around the basement. But the math wasn't working. Something was wrong, and I kept on going back and forth, and I was pulling tape measures all over the place from my civil marks, my boundary markers, and it appeared that my caissons were right up against the basement, and they weren't supposed to be that close. They were supposed to be, I remember, maybe 30 inches, 36 inches away. So I pulled some tape off of the property lines and realized the architect messed up. When they did their initial drawings, the basement, they drew it 24 inches closer to the water than it was. It was further back, and so it slammed my caisson right up against the basement, and it couldn't be drilled there. So of course I connect with the architect, and we had to stand by for several weeks, worked on some other things. But the drill rig was just idle. We couldn't proceed. So the architect upgraded the plans, gives me this big revision. And not only did that, but we couldn't just move it back, because the backside of the property where the garages were, we couldn't push that, just push the building. It was already at a setback. So we had to force the side by the caissons into the house. We lost 2 feet in the house. But as a result, the staircase and the kitchen and the walls and the bed, everything was off. So they had to totally revise this entire thing. Now, in this case, the human earthly architect had made an error. He admitted it. They messed up. But you need to know that our divine architect doesn't do that. That's not what happens when we need major life revisions. There are times when you and I go sideways, and we know that we have to own those bad choices. But sometimes it's not about us. It's about family members or friends or co-workers or total strangers. Some could be have ill intent, and some it just happened. Where you get T-boned by life, you get a pandemic, you get into an accident or a work situation, and your plans have just changed. And also the enemy of our souls is certainly out there trying to trip us up at every turn. God is not the author of bad choices. He's not the author of other people's bad choices necessarily, but he can use all this stuff for good. He doesn't cause it, but he can use it. And that's why, friends, we should never untether ourselves from our personal history. We might want to delete a lot of things that we said, we did, we responded to incorrectly. You can't do that. You can't eliminate the past and expect to proceed in the future with any progress, as if those things didn't happen. God actually uses those. Well, the life of Joseph is a great example for us. What his brothers meant for evil, God used for good. I mean, it's a wonderful story of redemption. It's a wonderful story of forgiveness. And Joseph extended that forgiveness to his brothers. Do they deserve it? Of course not, but neither do you and me. But what we find is God uses all of the catastrophes of life, if we let him, weave it into the new plan. And maybe we're on plan Z times 3 or whatever it might look like. But you see, the more we deviate from the plan, the more God has to revise. And the longer it takes for us to get to that place where God wants us to be. So again, I might suggest, forget the New Year's resolutions, but why don't we get a hold of God's plan? And why don't we understand that he has a good plan? It's an amazing plan. He knows it, and he wants us to know it as well. And because these RFI answers that come, these prayer answers and the plan revisions, there's something else I want to bring to your attention. Now, this is really important, friends. On the bottom right corner of every set of plans is a small section called revisions. Now, depending on the RFI, depending on how many updates the architect has made to the plan, the bottom date shown in the revision column is the most current set of plans I was to be working from. Does that make sense to you? I mean, why is this important? Regardless of what took place or how extensive the revision was, or the RFI answer, God is on the move as the architect. He's the designer. He's the one that's reworking the plans. And friends, the plans are dynamic, as we've been talking about. Life is not static. And when we're calling out an RFI to God and we're pleading for God to give me more insight, more instructions, more directions, I mean, you can't expect the RFI to come back to your email box answered, and then you just disregard it. This changes the trajectory of our lives when we have an answer to prayer, when God makes a revision to our plans. I mean, a renovation project like you and I, friends, it's a work in progress. It's multifaceted, it's complex, and it requires that you and I stay in constant communication with the architect. I had a great relationship with my architects, my engineers, my interior decorators, my subs. I mean, friends, you've got to stay in contact. If I expect this thing to go as smoothly as possible and without any glitch, if I need to get an answer to my subcontractor so they can keep working tomorrow, then I have to be in communication with my designers and my engineers and, of course, my architect, if that's going to happen. Not every detail is written at the time of the architect's drawings. Not every detail of your life and your renovation is written as well, friends. It's interactive. God invites us into the process, because we grow as we wait on Him for the answer to our RFI. So let me ask you a question. What was I supposed to do with the older, now out-of-date set of plans? Because what I had to do when this big revision came for this caisson problem that we had, several weeks passed by, as I mentioned. I had to take these things down to the counter and work with a plan checker. He reviewed them. He stamped the pages as acceptable. There was a new revision date in the bottom right corner. He then gave me the original set of plans. I had to go over at a table off to the side, unfold them, take the staples out, remove the old plan pages, and replace them with the new ones. Took out the old ones with the old date, the old set, the old plan, and now I had inserted a new authorized permitted set. So one of them stayed in the official set at the city of Newport Beach, and I got another set that I now can take to a printer, and I can run off new sets. So again, what was I supposed to do with the older set of plans? Not just my micro set, all these sets that I had handed out to different subcontractors that we were all working off of. What did I have to do? Throw them away. Or, if not throw them away, rip out the old pages and insert new ones, or email new CAD drawings to different people so that they also understood that we are working from this set of authorized plans. Friends, old information and details are exactly that. They are old. They are outdated. It doesn't matter how much you might have liked them, or how you were so accustomed to them. And, well, I don't want to change all this. We got to go backwards and fix this. If we are trusting the architect and his design and what's authorized by the city, what's permitted, what will be inspected, then, friends, we can't go rogue, and we can't just say, I like the old ones better, if we want to follow and have the blessing of the architect. Now, a biblical case for this, and there are a number of them, but the first one that came to mind kind of made sense to me, is found in the Torah, in the first 5 books, the Pentateuch, concerning the dietary laws that Yahweh had established for the Israelites. And so for thousands of years, they followed this dietary restrictive diet. Leviticus 11 kind of gives us the understanding of what was acceptable, what was unacceptable as far as animals, birds, fish, even insects, the kind that were to be eaten and or not eaten. Yet if we look in the New Testament in Acts chapter 10, we see that God is changing the diet. He's changing the menu. Let me read you a few verses from Acts 10, beginning at verse 9. The next day, as they were traveling and nearing the city, Peter went up to pray on the housetop about noon. Then he became hungry and wanted to eat, but while they were preparing something, he went into a visionary state. He saw heaven opened and an object that resembled a large sheet coming down, being lowered by its 4 corners to the earth. Verse 12. In it were all the 4-footed animals and reptiles of the earth and the birds of the sky. Then a voice said to him, Get up, Peter, kill and eat. No, Lord, Peter said. By the way, wrong answer. For I have never eaten anything common and ritually unclean. He's given God a what up for changing the menu, right? Verse 15, again, a second time a voice said to him, what God has made clean, you must not call common. This happened 3 times, and then the object was taken up into heaven. Now, friends, the reason Peter was so put out by this vision was because he was used to the old plan. I mean, for thousands of years, his family and the family before them and his ancestors, and he can read in Torah when this was established. God, you said, God, you put in writing this, like this. Well, by the way, the only authorized person to change God's word is, wait for it, God himself. And so when Jesus is changing the menu, he is certainly authorized to do that, being fully God. But you see, Peter couldn't comprehend that God would do this. And it maybe to him it was arbitrary. It was so radically different from going this way to literally 180 going this way. Problem that Peter had, and so many of us have today, is just believing that their obedience to some law was their pathway to acceptance. Because to them, it was a system of do's and don'ts, and God loves you if you do, and not so much if you don't. So here we find God changing things up. Obedience from the heart today is what God desires. We don't hold on to and cling to the command, we cling to the commander. If we are, in fact, slaves of Christ, we don't say what Peter said, and we can't just point a finger at him. We do the same thing when we say, no, Lord, which is contradictory by itself. See, we don't hold on to old plans. If he's Lord, if he's the architect, and we've given him the authorization to build our project, God has a plan for us. He knows the plans for us, and yet we're going to say, no. Friends, if he's in charge, then our job is to release the past and follow today's instructions. Now, friends, I don't know. That seems like a game changer. Wouldn't you agree? Of course, there was a bigger narrative behind this than just a menu change. What God was revealing to Peter, really, behind showing this vision, this picture of changing things up and following a new command, was that God had a bigger picture. God was revealing to Peter and the early disciples that his kingdom wasn't Jewish. His kingdom was global. I mean, it's really not new. The Jews should have known this, but back in Genesis chapter 12, God said, you will be a blessing to all the nations. Your seed will bless the entire world. And so we're just getting a revelation of what that now looks like. And when Cornelius, had the vision and sent some messengers to go get Peter, this vision had just happened to Peter. So by the time he gets there to Joppa and understands that God is changing things up, and the command was, don't call something common that I have blessed, that I have ordained. So what did he have to do? He had to choose to follow God's current command or not. But what if Peter would not have done that? What if Peter really didn't get it and wanted to stay like a Judaizer, kind of this Jewish Christian thing, and remain in the past, remain tethered to just the command, but not the commander? And friends, the church would look a little different today. Or perhaps God would just have to gone in another direction and bypassed Peter. And what a tragedy that would be. And what a tragedy that is for us if we choose to hang on to old plans and not allow our architect to design the plan that he has in store for us. Because, friends, we miss out on the blessing if we choose to not abide by the answered RFI or the new revision, the new date that God has provided to us. Now, friends, let me just say this. When we receive a response to our prayer RFI, or we receive this new revision on the plans and this new date, this is the one we're supposed to be working from. We can't ignore the revision, but you need to know that the information that's provided to us through an answered prayer will never contradict God's written word. It's like these details. The details in the back of this set of plans don't disregard the plan. They don't override the written plan. They expand on it. They give enlightenment. They give information. They give new direction for us. So all of these plan details that I have work hand in hand, and that's exactly what the RFIs do for us, is we are asking for more information. We are asking for insight that we don't have. I mean, friends, whatever gives us the idea that God doesn't change things up. He changes it up, not because he's arbitrary, but because you and I change the plan. Life is pretty complicated. It's very complex. People do things. They act foolishly, and it affects us and our kids and our grandkids, and it changes life. God never changes in character. But friends, he's constantly morphing plans for you and I because life is dynamic and worked out in real time. So let me remind you regarding his actual plan, friends, and like the plans that I actually build from. His plans are the way things are supposed to be, but they aren't the way things necessarily are. He has a plan. God knows the plans that he has for us. The question is, will we live them out? Will we allow him to work in us through the power of the Holy Spirit to accomplish the plan that he has designed? He has a plan. But will we do it? Will we follow it? Are we going to hold on to the old set of plans or release them for the new one? Friends, obedience is following Jesus' command today. And so here we are, 2022. It's time to follow God's plan, right? If you want to make some New Year's resolutions like I mentioned, hey, go ahead. But why don't we focus on what God's plan is? Why don't we send up some RFIs and wait for the answers? Why don't we get some more details on what his plan looks like and proceed? Well, I hope you'll join me next time when I discuss with you more really of some of the specific details of what that plan looks like. Because, friends, I think you're going to like the plan. All right, go with God. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today. For more information, check out our website at renovationproject.org. And make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can be alerted to when our next video is posted.